How to trigger the 16 personalities. ESTP and ESFP. Sit still. Don't move. Somehow maneuver them into a situation where they have to be waiting around, completely unable to do any activity. Easier said than done. Maybe you hand them a phone that's on hold and ask them to wait for it for you, while you do some other task of immense importance. Both of these types are at their worst when they are bored. They thrive on activity and action. As long as they're doing something, they feel alive. Much like great white sharks, who have to keep swimming, otherwise they'll die. Anything that forces them to be static and stagnant will annoy them pretty quickly, especially if it's in service of some goal that they find entirely pointless and boring. ISTP and INTP. Just lie instead. Tell them that in order to have good relationships with people and not be socially awkward or even outcast, that they'll basically have to bite their tongue to the point of lying to people, and can never share their true unfiltered opinions on anything. Both of these types have a strong intellectual independence, which could rightly be described as a kind of integrity as well. Putting them in positions where they have to compromise this, which is often the case in social situations, is both extremely draining to them and yes, very triggering as well. It's especially difficult for them because they do very much care about social harmony. It's something they will often invest a lot of time trying to analyze in order to improve. So being stuck between those two opposing forces is likely to frustrate them greatly. INFJ and INTJ. The superficial here and now. INTJs and INFJs can be really bogged down by the mundane, superficial, and day-to-day considerations of life. This is true for any intuitive type, but both of these types have a somewhat contentious relationship with living in the present moment. If you can somehow trap them in situations where their thoughts, theories, plans, and future projections are just irrelevant, they will feel like they're slowly withering away. They can often find themselves advising people about issues they can see coming down the line that a person ought to account for or plan around, only to have their concerns be ignored, or worse, be seen as overly analysing things, and even worrying or being paranoid to a fault. There is something especially annoying about trying to make use of a natural strength of yours, only to have it shut down or devalued. That would be deeply irritating to anyone and any type. Because both of these types are naturally future-focused, they will often find themselves in cycles of predicting things that will happen, seeing problems down the line, or potential opportunities, getting overlooked and ignored, then eventually being vindicated. That can be an enjoyable feeling, but it's much better when people actually listen to them. ENFJ and ESFJ. None of your business. These types are people. Although the vast majority of the time, they are both going to come across as highly extroverted. Even if they're not extroverted in the conventional social sense, people will still occupy the majority of their focus in life, in some form or another. People will often open up to them, share their life story, and even their darkest and deepest secrets. So intentionally being closed off towards them, or telling them to mind their own business, is definitely something that can come as a shock to them. It's not something they hear that often. ENFJs and ESFJs tend to be excellent advice givers who genuinely do know what's best for other people. Putting up that wall robs them of the ability to use their main strength. It's especially difficult when they can see a person in their life making the same kind of mistake, wanting to step in and advise them, even in a subtle way, and not having the opportunity to. They are brilliant at breaking down walls, but when someone is intensely and intentionally closed off, it can definitely get to them. A particularly triggering thing for them is also being told that they are illogical or irrational. Every type has a level of insecurity about their inferior function, so aiming for that could endear you to them or make them feel attacked, depending on how you do it. ENTP and ENFP. Stupid ideas. Both of these types are people who pride themselves on ideational acrobatics. So, start by telling them that their ideas are stupid. Maybe even drop the line, ideas are cheap, and execution is everything. That will start things off on a beautifully contentious note. Their natural reaction might well be to go looking for evidence to prove their ideas, and show they are entirely plausible and doable, including just arguing with you relentlessly about it. This is the point where you continue to dismissively say, yeah, that just won't work, or totally impractical. Maybe even call them overly idealistic while you're at it. You do need to be careful though. You don't want to push them to the point where they actually successfully carry out the business idea they've been talking about and become millionaires simply to prove you wrong. It can be really annoying when that happens, and they'll be truly insufferable after it. ISFJ and ISTJ. Just wing it. You'll be fine. As I've said before about these types, if they're given enough time and space to prepare, they can be unstoppable. This is because they craft systems, procedures, practices, and make them consistent habits in their life. Once those regimes are set up, they can be adjusted and adapted over time to the point where they're operating at an extremely high level, almost on autopilot. Both of these types are great at picking up skills for this reason. Telling them that there's no need to prepare and that they can just wing it and figure it out on the fly is instantly going to be triggering and stressful for them. It's not necessarily because they're bad at adapting in chaotic situations. It's more that it's going to be a continually stressful state of being to exist in. They need a solid foundation to be at their best, a place to build from. So throw them into a situation, making out that it will be totally fine for them to improvise, then constantly move the goalposts around in a way that stops them from gaining a foothold on the situation. Also, if you're working with them, taking really huge, bold risks all of the time without stopping to assess the potential consequences will drive them nuts. ENTJ and ESTJ. Am I supposed to be impressed? Both of these types are achievement driven. A fulfilling day for them is one where you have a list of things to do and you get them done. They are also quite vocal people lots of the time. If they have a project on the go, or more likely many projects on the go, then they'll want to tell you about it. What they're working on excites them on a deep level. So not showing interest in that, or even more than that, dismissing it as not worth your attention, will definitely be annoying to them. Their achievements and, well, them, can sometimes be inseparable. That's an issue they often have to contend with. If you want to be endearing to an ENTJ or ESTJ, then letting them talk at length about what they're currently working on is a great move. Another thing that will get an extremely forceful reaction from them is to accuse them of lacking values or principles. Although they themselves can actually lean into that stereotype of them being cold juggernauts, when other people see them as being unprincipled people, it bothers them a lot. INFP and ISFP. So, what are you doing with your life? Contrary to what you might think, I don't believe that invalidating their feelings will have that much of an effect on them, since both of these types tend to be very emotionally mature, so they'll see through that quite easily. One thing that I've certainly noticed them get very agitated, triggered, and angered by is seeing someone else's feelings get invalidated or cast as stupid and irrational. They'll often leap to the defense of a person in that situation. Another thing that will definitely bother them is when people try to imply that not having their stuff together in life is somehow an indication that they are failing at life. So interrogating them with questions like, what have you gotten done today? Or, what's your plan for today? Or this week? Or this month? Can certainly get under their skin. They don't measure a life well lived using those cold, harsh metrics. To them, it's much more complex and individual than that. That is an extremely difficult thing to explain to certain types of people and certain types, and that can be a regular source of frustration for them. If you really want to trigger me, then don't subscribe, don't leave a comment, and definitely don't join the Love Who Discord server.